Good morning, student. My name is Shivam Mishra, and we are here to discuss the newspaper analysis. Let's get started. The first article is about delimitation. Delimitation after 2027. Delimitation is about distribution of seats, and this is a kind of revision in a distribution of seats in legislative bodies, so that according to the change of populations and change of demographics, there is a change in the border of the seats, there is change in the population of the seats, population of the legislative body. So this has been conducted by the election commission. The article talks about delimitation. It is actually an constitutional process to redraw electoral boundaries. Is due after census 2027 and will significantly impact political distribution in the Lok Sabha, affecting the fairness, federalism, and regional balance. And the distribution of seats directly impact the federalism of a country. The Constitution mandates, because the Constitution mandates delimitations after every census of the population, which is to be held in a decadal way. After 10 years, we used to conduct the survey, and after every survey, constitution mandates for a delimitation commissions. But this has been suspended. The delimitations was suspended by 1976 to avoid penalizing state, because at that point of time when there was a increase in population in North India and there was a control in population in South India. So because of increasing population, there were more number of seats which were given to North Indian states, and because of the population control in South Indian had very less increase in number of seats after delimitation. So there was a disputes among, because the states who are controlling the population have been punished with the less number of representation in the constitutional body. So because of that, South India and North India tussle, and there was a much uh, di- uh, differences and circumstances arrive. So there was a constitution amendments which suspended the delimitation commission after 1976, and that it was done with 84th Amendment Act 2001, extending this suspension until after 2026. So in 2026 it will be an end of a suspension. In 2027 we need to do the limitations. Currently, Lok Sabha representation is based on the elections which are conducted, and the number of distribution of seats currently is based on 1971 census, with 548 million people, not the current 1.47 billion people, necessitating to major distribution of seat post. At that point, we had only 548 million people, which has now increased to 1.47 billion people. And so you can make out the difference, how much difference has been after 1971. There is approx a 1 billion increase of population, and so uh, this becomes a point of concern, because previous delimitation commission took 3 to 5.5 years which was last one in 2002 to 2008, previous delimitations, it took across 3.5 to 5 years. So, only redrawing the internal boundaries without relocating the seats among the states. The next will be likely relocated seats and create reserve constituencies for women's 33% of quotas, which we had earlier. We are aware of that there is a 33% of women's reservation in Lok Sabha, which is to be implemented until the post 2034 elections. Fertility rates have diverged since 1970s, with the southern and western states achieving below replacement fertility, while the north states like Uttar Pradesh and Bihar continue high growth, and this leading to a potential political weight loss for the state that controlled the growth that we actually talked about, because there was a decrease in fertility rate in states like South India and the western states. So, and there is increase in population in northern states like UP, Bihar. So if the delimitation is conducted purely based on the population, so these will be in more that favors the north Indian states, and because of the population measures they had applied and they had followed to decrease the population, they will be, the article talked about, they will be punished. This we which we had already taught in 1971 census. And that is why there was a freezing of delimitations after 1976. This one. Protection suggests Uttar Pradesh could increase if we are going to distribute the seats purely on the population basis. There will be UP's increase in seats from 80, presently it has 80 seats, to 151 seats, and Bihar it will be 40 to 82 seats, but and it can be expanded Lok Sabha of 888 members, the article talks about, while the Tamil Nadu and Kerala share will be decreasing. Does it raise the concern? Because it will penalize those states who have followed the well population control measures. Union Minister Amit Shah promised in 2025, there was a debate, no debate, I would say there was a speech of Home Minister Amit Shah where he promised that no southern states would lose seats, but this may not address the imbalance that northern states gain significantly, potentially requiring a suspension of redistribution and inviting legal challenges. The article later talks about that we have the options for addressing the issues, including extending the freeze beyond 2026. The article talks about as a solution to these problem that increase of freeze beyond 2026, or we can have the expansion of Lok Sabha, adopting a weighted formula for seat allocations, strengthening the Rajya Sabha, bifurcating Uttar Pradesh, phased redistribution across election cycle. So these have been the solutions to these, because there was a coming debate that UP should be divided because it is a large states. So it becomes because of that also it becomes very much the seats, if it is increased to 150, there becomes that administrative challenge for the politicians and bureaucrats. So there is a demand for bifurcation of the UP also. It was also giving the solution that the election should be distributed in phased wise. So overall, delimitation will fundamentally, of course, it is going to reshape the coalition politics, with two states potentially commanding a quarter of Lok Sabha. This is, it is talking about the UP and Bihar. If we plus the number of seats, it will be like to 33 seats. So it is like controlling quarter of the Lok Sabha seats. So reducing the leverage of regional parties, because these states, the coalition becomes strong and leverage, and these regional parties would be getting benefit. So regional parties are necessitating careful navigation between the constitutional fairness and political stability. This is what the article talks about: constitutional fairness versus political stability. The Delimitation Commission should include demography, constitution law, and federal studies, with state representations ensuring transparency, public hearing, and oversight to prevent manipulation and uphold the federal spirit. This is what articles talks about. Then it comes to the next point where it also asks to redraw the internal constituency boundaries, considering geography, administrative convenience, and SC/ST representation, with potential for manipulation in the location of specific scheduled caste constituencies. So the article talks about that, there should be inclusion not only of demography. I'm sorry, there should be not be inclusion of only demography, plus we need to include the geography, constitutional law, plus federal spirit. So all these things should be taken into considerations while demarking the boundaries. This also asking for the redraw of internal constituency, like constituency of UP, which can lead be more administrative convenience, because the huge states with the population of, still according to 2011 census, we got UP as a 22 million people, 22 cr, sorry, 22 crores uh, population. So this is a huge population according to 2011 only, but now we have much increase of the populations, so it may consist of 3 cr, 30 cr of populations. So the article suggests that the delimitation should be should also consider the reshaping of internal constituencies boundary, and it should also consider the administrative convenience and SC/ST representation. So this should also be taken into consideration. And thus delimitation is a critical national milestone. Of course, this is a critical national milestone that can either modernize, if we follow the delimitations in more rational way, it will either modernize or and reaffirm unity, or if we are not going to follow the more rationalized way and more representative inclusive way, it may create a distrust and harm to the federal spirit. Thus, and depending on its executions and emphasizing the need for dialogue and shared justice. This is what articles talk about. The next point is, or rather, the next article talks about right to dignity. Asha and Anganwadi workers in West Bengal are protesting for a wage increase to 15,000 per month, highlighting the denial of permanent employed status despite their crucial role in welfare schemes. The Indira Gandhi government initially denied these workers worker status under the Integrated Child Development Program. We got the program of ICDS started in 1975, I guess. I'm not sure about the date, but it was launched very much earlier during the Indira Gandhi period, and it has a task of improving the child health, and overall nutrition should be taken care of. So we got the Anganwadis and Asha workers. they have been a very uh, considered as the first hand workers during the COVID period, and recently there was a protest in West Bengal where they're asking for the increase in their salary and permanent status of work. The National Union was formed in 1989, but the state continued to classify them as a scheme workers without offering permanent government job, even during the liberalization also. The state of Karnataka versus Amir B. There was a new case, KT versus Amir B 1996, where the tribunal gave the decision which excluded Anganwadi workers from government employee status, despite the Supreme Court expanding the right to food in 2004. The ASHA program began in mid 2000 and with workers framed as activists and recommendations for job regularization and benefits at the 45th we got 45th labor conference. So there was a recommendations for job regularization and benefits for these ASHA and Anganwadi workers, of course. One which was not implemented by the successive government, and thus in 2015 the NDA government reduced the ICDS budget and leading to ongoing protest by these workers. And in 2018 there was a center which froze its pay contributions, leaving workers to absorb the fiscal shocks. So so the new labor code, which there was a four law which is considered as a labor code, and uh, this was implemented last year, and this new labor code lacks guarantee for the better working conditions for the gig workers, although it was there was a steps in which there was a much improvement in their social security schemes, but above them there are a lot of issues which the guys faced, like like the like algorithm based allocation of services, and the job security and kind of provident fund mechanism. They still face a lot of things, and that is why there was a all India protest by the gig workers, dated I think on 31st December, where they protested for the better working conditions. And so this has been urged to center to reclassify these workers as a statutory employees. So there was a demand to classify or reclassify these ASHA and Anganwadi workers as a statutory employees under the Code on Social Security and Minimum Wages and Pension Coverage to bridge fiscal gap for the equitable pay across the region. And thus, this is all about this article. Let's go to the next one. India and European Unions are finalizing a trade agreement ahead of the 16th India AU summit, which is to be held on Jan 27. India EU trade ties, which is which will be focused on free trade agreement, which our industrial ministers has considered as a mother of all deals, because of course we got a number of countries, 20 approx 22 23 members we got under the European unions, which will benefit from our FTA contracts. So there is a huge potential for Indian goods, especially the agricultural goods, which can fetch a good income for the farmers, thus also boosting the aim for where we aimed for doubling the farmers incomes and improving the conditions to the farmers. So Recently, there has been a FTA with the New Zealand, and thus and there was exclusion of provisions where New Zealand would be exporting the dairy products. Thus, the FTA with the New Zealand also was considered as or speculated as a more fortune for the India, and thus European Union also coming in a way to contribute in the growing Indian economy. So there was a FTA with challenges on agriculture, like of course because of the use of pesticides and the not quality rich products. There is of course hurdle in the European markets for the Indian goods. There is also a carbon border tax which creates a hurdle for the India's carbon intensive economies or carbon intensive sectors like steel. We got still 50% of our energy produced through the coals, so still we are heavily depends on the carbon emissions and carbon rich fuels. There was a debate or challenge related to service delivery and non-tariff barriers. Service delivery and non-tariff barriers. Thus, these are the challenges for India EU FTA. The summit will also address a new defense and security partnership, which are things to be addressed in this, like defense and security partnership, information security agreement, MOU on mobility framework. Thus, defense, information and security agreement, mobility framework. These are also should be addressed in this under the summit, which is to be held on 27 January. There was a joint statement which will outline a strategic roadmap for India European Union's partnership over the next 5 years, covering climate change, supply chains, critical minerals, climate change, supply chains, critical minerals, human assistance during the disaster, thus covering the disaster relief also, and multilateral cooperations. This is climate change. This is supply chain. This is critical minerals, human assistance, disaster relief, and multilateral cooperations. So it might be difficult for you to understand the short terms, but if you kindly listen to the lecture and listen to my words, you can easily comprehend these short forms. And if you have to note it down from anywhere else and for anywhere, you can just write it down with the full form only, that you can later on understand it. There was a Commerce Secretary, Rajesh Agrawal, who confirmed that on January 15th that sensitive agricultural issues are excluded from the trade negotiations, because of course there was a agricultural issue in that, in which there was a mainly such products which consist of pesticides, in which kind of pesticide is used, herbicides are used, the chemical which is used, and overall how the plant is grown, genetic things is also concluded. So there was a this becomes a sensitive area, and the secretary announced, the commerce secretary, he confirmed that the sensitive areas like agriculture issues would be included from the trade negotiations, and deal expected to be announced but not signed next week. The European Union recent deal with Mercosur. Mercosur is like a countries of Latin America. This becomes an important. We have to Merco Mercosur. These are the group of countries of Latin America who have FTA between them. So recently, the European Union has deal with the Mercosur countries, which faced delay due to agricultural concern only. The defense and security agreement is significant as it is only the third such agreement in Asia after Japan and Republic of Korea, with specific framework where there will be co-production of technology or transfer of technologies. There is a technology transfer, tech transfer in the defense agreement remains subject to the company and country discretions, highlighting the differences in India European Union approaches to Russian issues. The India and EU acknowledge their different historical ties with Russia and emphasizing the importance of dialogues on security threat. There was MOU on mobility, which will address the highly skilled workers, students, researchers, and seasonal workers. This part. This will be for highly skilled workers, students, and researchers. This will be a memorandum of understanding. India and EU will also take into consideration the IMEC, India Middle East Corridor, Economic Corridor, which was the initiative of India. Uh, I think came into light in G20's India's presidency, and it will cover the areas of from Asia to Europe and and it will cover the countries. I guess this is we got the map. This is an Africa country. This India, Asia. So it will start from here and this will be passing to here and in here then. India Middle East Economic Corridor. This map we can draw in our main answer while writing the answer of any question. The other article talks about the India European only because there was a visit of President of European Commission and the President of European Council in India on 77th Republic Day. So it, it, it contributes in deepening the relation between the EU and India. India's relationship with US has been strained. Of course, we know because of these Trump and tariff issues and due to this punitive tariffs accusation related to Modi's war in Ukraine and which India has rejected as a misleading. This situation highlights the need for strategic autonomy over strategic patience. So, article talks about that India's needed the strategic autonomy versus strategic patience. India EU relationship has been underutilized and often hindered by issues related to Russia, China, and especially focusing US relation. India was relying on US, but recent economic headwinds and uncertain policies of United States have prompted India to diversify its trade mechanism, and that is why it is now and it is now having a debates with various countries like we got a countries of Middle East also. We got to consult with the countries of Eastern Western Europe. Mm, we have now been discussing with the European Unions. So there has been a diversification of trade, and India and EU are finalizing a FTA that has been in negotiation since 2007, and this FTA could enhance opportunities in textiles, pharmaceuticals, chemical industries, automobiles, digital services in India. Major issues, of course, we already discussed it, that carbon border adjustment mechanism, which imposes a 20 to 35% of carbon charge on Indian exports like steel and aluminium. EU has proposed a security and defense partnership with India. It has also partnership could save the model for other nations seeking new alliances amidst US unpredictability and China's assertiveness. It emphasizes sovereign decision makings without external vetoes. Both India and EU recognize the importance of strategic economy to reduce over dependence on countries like Russia, China, and USA and all. So the India and EU have potential to co-create a new chapter in multilateralism, promoting a multipolar order that is resilient, equitable, sovereign, and if they can overcome internal bureaucratic challenges. There was a news about India's battery manufacturing scheme, which faces hurdle in nowadays. There was a scheme, a PLI scheme, Advanced Chemistry Cell Production Linked Incentive. That is Advanced Chemistry Cell Production Linked Incentive Scheme, which was launched in October by Ministry of Heavy Industry, aims to boost the domestic next generation battery manufacturing in India, but it faces challenge due to visa delays for for specialist Chinese, especially Chinese specialist. There is local manufacturing mandates, which is not to be, which is very strict, and there is a lack of course critical technologies. As October 2025, only 1.4 gigawatt of battery cell have been commissioned on time, and 8.6 gigawatt underdeveloped but delayed. 1.4 gigawatt on time, 8.6 gigawatt were delayed against the 2021 plan's target of 50 gigawatt by 2026. There is a target of 50 gigawatt by 2026. Advanced chemicals chemistry cell use technologies like these ACC. It use technologies like lithium ion. India although have reserves of lithium, but it is very costly uh, to process the lithium grade to be used in directly technology. So India mainly import these ions and metals. There are also electric vehicles and differ from traditional lead acid batteries. Despite India's initial interest, only 30 gigawatt capacity was allotted to companies like Ola Electric, Reliance New Energy, and Rajesh Exports, with Hyundai Global dropping out, and none of these companies have expertise in battery manufacturing. The experienced companies like Amaraja and Exide Industry were priced out due to high net worth requirements of 2.25 billion per gigawatt hour, limiting participation to large corporates. No incentives have been disbursed against the targeted 2900 crores. Indian cell manufacturing ecosystem is immature. Indian cell manufacturing industry is considered immature, highly reliant on imports from China, because China holds most of the critical minerals and its refining of the rare earth elements which required for the constructions and manufacturing of the batteries, doing more innovations, and thus we are mainly dependent on the China, and thus ACC PLI scheme was launched only on the very basis to reduce the dependence on the China, which we could not achieve. So the article talks about that the schemes like this should be promoted, should be made more inclusive, so that even the small corporates are able to participate in the innovation sectors and thus contributing to India's targets of getting this 50 gigawatt by 2026. There was a news. The next news is about Narega Morcha. There is a decentralized stir on Rural Job Act. Narega Shanghars Morcha, which plans a decentralized campaign against the G Ramji bill, that is VB Viksit Bharat Guarantee for Rozgar and Ajivika Mission, Grameen Act 2025. Protest will begin on Republic Day, and which is said to dilute the Gram Panchayat power and centralized decision making. Has been claimed by the opposition. Ministry of Rural Development directed states to hold special Gram Sabhas and to discuss the Act features following its passage in Parliament. So, the Ministry of Rural Development has asked its people to hold a special Gram Sabhas and explain about the Act or what is Act about. A Mahapanchayat is planned for Feb 2, coinciding with 20th anniversary of Marega, aiming to restore Manrega through widespread decentralized campaign. This has been not a much important news. There was a news of Netaji's vision. The Chief Defence Staff General Anil Chauhan, CDS Anil Chauhan, highlighted the enduring relevance of Neta Subhash Chandra Bose strategic visions, emphasizing its lesson for India in polycentric and unstable global order. Thus, Subhash Chandra Bose, oftenly referred at as Netaji. So he has been discussed by the CDS, so it becomes an important topic. Although he has been a very important figure in India's freedom struggle, so there also we read it while reading the modern India, but we had to read about some other informations, or we can easily go and revise those things. The information related to Netaji, his presidentialship in the Congress, and about his contribution in INA, the Indian National Army, and contribution for India's independence. This is all about news of the day. There was a 42 nations poll bodies to collaborate because election management bodies EVMs of 42 countries have agreed to collaborate on 5 key issues, including the electoral rolls, conduct of electoral rolls, use of technology. So it was a part of Delhi Declaration, which was adopted on January 23 during the international, which we had already talked about, that it is going to be held on in Delhi International Conference on Democracy and Election Management 2026. There was a Delhi Declaration where EBMs, election management bodies, have of 42 countries have agreed to collaborate on 5 issues. They will be committed on working together for research, publications, as well as training and capacity building. The declaration was presented by India's Chief Election Commissioner Gyanesh Kumar alongside with Election Commission Sukhbir Singh Sandhu and Vivek Joshi. There was a news where Union Ministry has asked the state to diversify their fish basket, means diversify of their seafood, especially the markets, and produce to mitigate risk and disease and climate change impact and to appeal global customers. So the ministry asked that there is a risk on relying of single species. So we need to diversify it through research and innovations, through we can cross breedings and through genetic genes technologies in aquaculture, which is it will also broaden the variety of food we can have, the seafood we can have, and also it will be reduce the risk while while we are facing during the climate change issues, and diseases also have been also a point of concern in the seafoods, and that will also be checked with the time to time. The central has asked for the states. So this is all about the news of the day, and I think there are rest of the some of the topics which is very minimal topics, and so I'll try to give you the names or I'll explain you in the next video. But this is today's newspaper analysis. Thank you for watching.